Hello and welcome to the podcast edition of ANC's Matters of Fact. I'm Christian Esguerra. Today we're joined by Mr. Ira Cruz. He's the director of the transport advocacy group called AltMobility PH. Thank you very much, Ira, for joining us.
Hello, Christian. Thank you for inviting us to be here.
Okay, of course, for today we're going to talk about a very big problem experienced by a lot of Filipinos day in and day out. We know that based on a study in 2017, commuters here in Metro Manila and motorists spend an average of 66 minutes daily stuck in traffic. And of course, we know this, the figure that is always included in any discussion about traffic congestion, 3.5 billion pesos lost daily due to traffic congestion. Now, before we talk about your solutions and your approach to this problem, let's talk about your group first. How was this formed?
Okay, so we have been together at least, I guess, since last year, at least for the time that I joined. And then really what it is that we're all commuters. That's why we say we're ordinary citizens because we really all commute. But at the same time, we are all in the transport industry. And so we felt that because of our involvement in planning transport solutions, we can offer a solution to all commuters out there and improving the city.
How big is this group?
We're about 10 core members.
10 core members. And how did you get together exactly?
For
you didn't know anyone before? All of the members, you didn't know everyone?
Nope. I know one of them because I worked with him. For everybody else, they went to school together. Some of them were former, for some of them, they worked together as well. So either they worked together, they were in school together.
And you were united by common advocacy or common frustration.
Yes. So we wanted to solve commuting experience. That's really what we wanted to do. We were looking at various ways of doing this. First of all, the group built How's Your Biyahe Bes? That's a Facebook group.
How's Your Biyahe Bes?
Yes.
Bes as in Bes.
Bes.
Beshi.
Yes, Beshkels.
Okay.
Yes. So How's Your Biyahe Bes? I think at this point we have about 3,500 likes. And what the original intention of that group, and it still plays that today, is to popularize discussions on mobility and transportation in Metro Manila. Because before, of course, people would think that it's such a technical issue, that there's nothing that they can't contribute to the discussion because it's only for quote unquote experts,
for the technical guys.
Right.
So here the discussions are focused on the commuters.
Yes. So
and their common passion and frustration.
Right.
And solutions.
Correct. So the common conversations that happen in the page would be people complaining or showing about how horrible their biyahe was, and also sharing solutions like best practices in other countries or even best practices here in the Philippines.
So mostly these are young people like like yourself, experiencing the daily commute in Metro Manila.
Well, the majority would be, but there, of course, it's really a wide spectrum of followers. Mostly people that really commute on a day-to-day basis in Metro Manila.
Now, what's the biggest frustration or exasperation of yourself, personally?
Myself.
As a commuter.
That I can't commute as often as I want to. That I would find myself in situations where I have to tell myself, okay, for today, I need to bring a car. And that really frustrates me. My primary mode of transport is riding my kick scooter. And I enjoy that because number one, I'm not contributing to the traffic, but it actually gets me to where I need to go so much faster than everybody else.
Here you mentioned you call that a
an electric kick scooter.
Kick scooter. So some people might just refer to that as a scooter, but this one, it's foldable, right?
Yeah, it's foldable. It's a standing scooter.
You actually use that on your way here.
That's right.
In the studio, right?
That's right.
Now, you have that perspective that you would like to commute, and you're using the kick
scooter.
Kick scooter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you can call it EKS.
EKS. But
Yes.
but the infrastructure or the behavior, how's your experience using that to move around the city?
All right. Well, number one, there's no infrastructure. There's some cities that have started building infrastructure that's friendlier for bicycles, for low-powered two-wheel transport modes like bikes, electric kick scooters. But by and large, there's no infrastructure that makes it easier or nor encourage people to do this. It's number one. Number two, motorists normally find you as a nuisance on the road. One, there's no infrastructure for us, so obviously we're sharing the road with them, and that's also a brand new concept in Metro Manila, or in the Philippines in general, because we're very car centric.
Yeah.
So cars obviously feel entitled to the road, and so that makes it very difficult for us because it makes it unsafe, and it makes our ride very unsavory. I've been yelled at, honked at several times, and I've gotten so used to it, it just flies off my head. Anyway,
What do they usually tell you?
they tell you to get out of the way. They honk you, tell you to get out of the way. They try to edge you out of the road. So we also develop some hacks into making sure that we're safe. Like as I was telling you earlier,
Like what hacks?
I'd take the full lane.
Yeah.
Because normally what bikers would do is that they would go as close to the gutter as possible so that they won't be in the way. But what that does is that cars just end up pushing you to the side, which can cause you to fall. And the gutters sometimes have open canals and all that. No? So that's not safe.
So somehow bikers are treated like second class or third class citizens
Yeah.
on the road because the priority, of course, in terms of or size,
Right.
the buses, the trucks.
Yes.
In terms
yes.
of freight, the
Right.
vehicles.
So you're really swept over to the side.
Yeah.
And that makes it very unsafe. And it doesn't really encourage that many people to consider cycling or riding EKS.
So you take the main lane.
So what I do is I take the full lane. I don't, but maybe full lane, not the median, not the intersection, not the median or
No.
the island, but you really take the full lane. And what that does is that it forces the cars to make a full U-turn, to make a full overtake.
That's when you usually get yelled at.
No, not really, because instead of them edging you out, they actually make a full overtake, and that makes it a lot safer.
So where do you attribute that kind of attitude of some motorists to people like you using scooters?
Change is hard to accept. Even and so they also don't know what we are. No, like what do you do with bikers? What do you do with? They don't even know what that device is called, and that makes it difficult for them to understand how to or what to do with you in the road. Which is why infrastructure is very important because it sets the behavior, it dictates the behavior of everybody.
So here in this case, you came all the way from Pasig City.
That's right.
To Quezon City.
That's
you
right.
were using your your scooter.
Correct.
How was the experience? How did you move from one place to another? Go to end up here.
Okay, so from where I live, I took the scooter. Fortunately, the sidewalk on EDSA heading towards the station where I need to get on is wide.
The MRT.
Going to the MRT station is wide, but it's not always paved well. So there would be spots where I have to get off and then carry it or dismount the sidewalk because the sidewalks aren't even or it gives way to a driveway. So that results to you getting on and off, and that makes it harder, a little bit harder for you to do that. But I don't think I'm safe enough to be on the road because of the buses that might not even be able to see me.
Yeah.
And then when I get to the station, I would have to fold my scooter and then carry it up that entire flight of stairs because elevators are not working.
And the escalators.
There are no escalators. In fact, sometimes they even lock up that entire elevator case altogether. So you have to carry that all the way up. And then I wait for my train. And normally what I do is I wait for the last train because I think that has a larger rear area.
Yeah, the last coach where you can park your scooter.
That's right. So I carry it, and normally because I'm northbound and I left earlier, there's not that many people. But when I would take it and there's a lot of people, I would just carry it.
Did you also get weird looks from some passengers or security guards?
I think in all fairness to the security staff of the MRT, they're used to it. There are more and more people now that are riding the EKS, and from what we're seeing, it's actually more inclusive because you're seeing more, aside from seeing more and more electric kick scooters, you're seeing more and more women that are on it, which means it's something that they're finding safe and convenient to use. So people are kind of getting used. I mean, of course, they look at you because it's a novelty, but it's not anymore. It's like there are less and less people asking me what I'm holding. And then I get off at Quezon Ave station, and from there I cross the street. I guess I have to climb again because you have to climb and then walk to the other side of EDSA, and then climb all the way down and then ride all the way here to ABS.
And you think that all elected officials in government are corrupt. Sabi ko, ganun ang pag-isip ninyo, wag na. Let EDSA rot there.
So here you have people like you who are, of course, open to commuting, very much open to commuting, but
Right.
you also have to contend with infrastructure.
That's right.
And the overall behavior, not just of your fellow commuters, but also by the policymakers,
Right.
to make sure that the environment will be safe and accommodating
That's right. That's
to
right.
commuters.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So I mean, what it does for certain cities is that, like Pasig in particular, there are protected bike lanes already in the Pasig CBD, and so that signals to people that I can bike. I think a good number of people would know how to bike, but they probably bike recreationally or in a protected space. But they don't think about it. It's something that they can do as a remedy for their short commutes because they don't think it's safe.
But somehow, do you feel that the attitude, especially of the policymakers, is somehow changing already?
If it-
Improving.
Number one, yes, I think there are more and more local government unit mayors that are open to introducing alternative forms of transport. Pasig in particular. In Quezon City, we're seeing more bike lanes. Marikina, I know, for several years now, has already had a network of bicycle lanes. So there's that shift. I think we're turning a corner, perhaps slower than we would want, but we're getting there. But also, because of the internet and Facebook and social media, we're exposed to how things are being done in other countries.
Yeah, that's very important because before the advent of social media, whenever, let's say, a politician or someone like you who had gone abroad and went back here and tell the people, hey, these are the best practices abroad
Right.
when it comes to the daily commuting. We can
Right.
try it here.
Right.
Sabihin, snobbish ka naman, we're in the Philippines, we have a
Right.
different context. But now, they're seeing how these things could work.
Right, right. But that's also a very important point that you raised. For some people, they see these solutions in other countries, but they cannot imagine it happening here in the Philippines. Whenever we talk to people and we say, you know what, we can put bike lanes here, or we can improve public transport. And sometimes they would say things like, hindi yan bagay dito, or maybe not here in the Philippines. But really, people have to start thinking that things can actually be better here in the Philippines, and we can do it. It doesn't even have to be very expensive.
Actually, that's even less expensive. If
Yes.
you talk about bikes, for example, you talk about Amsterdam,
Right.
Bicycle-centric city,
Right.
and even in many Asian countries also.
Mhm.
So I think it's a matter of attitude also.
Right. It's really shifting. I mean, what we always do at the beginning of conversations like this is to, number one, remind people that in order for us to change things in our city, we need to start doing different things, and that includes unshackling ourselves from thinking about vehicles all the time.
Yeah.
Don't get us wrong.
Guilty as charged.
I know, but don't get us wrong, because vehicles are here to stay, and that's fine. But what we'd like to do is to give people the option to not bring a car. One, the cost of a car is expensive, and it's not just about buying the car. There are related costs, including, parking, gasoline, maintenance, and some people don't have the money for that. Or for me, in particular, I prefer commuting. I prefer mass transport as a way.
Let's talk about your evolution in terms of behavior. At one
Okay.
point, were you also a car-centric
Yeah.
guy? Somehow, like many of us here, probably think that the car is the ultimate solution to convenient
Yeah.
traveling or transport in Metro Manila.
Yep. Yes, definitely. I was born at the time when there were no MRTs yet, and so commuting from where I grew up all the way to Makati was very difficult. There's not an easy way to get there, and I work in corporate. So there's a certain expectation that you come to work looking fresh, and I was handling accounts, and And of course, you need it to be presentable to your clients. And so, if you take mass public transport, you're not going to look the part when you get there. So I had to.
I think the conversations on Facebook usually use this term, yung amoy and mukhang mandirigma.
Yeah, yung mukha ka ng alas 5. So that's very important because then, but also that's why we have this term called transit deserts. These are areas that don't have a good connection to the mass transport. What it forces you to do, because it's so difficult for you to get to work or to get to a mass transport facility, you end up bringing a car. Even recently, I can go to before I got my electric kick scooter. For me to get to the nearest MRT station, I'd have to take a Grab. And the cost of my Grab, if I add a bit more, can already bring me all the way to Makati. So there's no incentive for me to take mass transport because for a little bit more, I actually get there more comfortably.
Yeah. So what did you do? You still took the MRT?
Well, because of cost, right?
Yeah.
I decided to just take the Grab all the way. But then when I started getting so I really wanted to come up with a solution for me to solve that gap between where I live and then the train station. And this is what you call the last mile, first mile solutions. And things like foldable bikes and electric kick scooters. It's exactly that. It really gets you to the transit station. And then so what I do now is I take my electric kick scooter, fold it up, and get into the train or a P2P. And then fold it up again when I get to my destination, and then that's my final
Now, of course,
mode of transport.
the policy of any government would affect the behavior of the people, right?
That's right.
So
Policy
here-
and infrastructure.
So in this case, you have a group of commuters who would like to commute really, make it more to make the atmosphere better for commuters like your motorists. But are you also? I understand your group was part of the efforts to convince our legislators to come up with a Magna Carta
That's right. So as I
for
mentioned earlier,
dignified commuting.
yes. There's a professor at the NCTS that defined dignity of travel as the ability to travel efficiently, safely, affordably, and sustainably. And this is a professor, Dr. Montalvo. And in concrete terms, what he said is that that means we should be able to walk, cycle, or take mass transit without being perceived as unable to afford.
Yeah, precisely.
Because in other countries, in Hong Kong, financial traders, financial bankers, and regular office workers, they all take mass transport. Not that they don't have a car.
Yeah, you see people in suits
Right.
actually taking the subway.
Right.
But of course, the common argument is that that's Japan, that's Hong Kong.
Right. But why can't we bring that here?
Yeah, precisely.
And in Metro Manila, which is a very high density city, is ripe for solutions like this because you definitely will have passengers because there's a lot of people in Metro Manila. We're one of the highest dense cities in the country and in the world, and that's ripe for mass transport.
Okay, now the first time I saw this proposal that you actually helped craft, right?
Yes.
Or actually, let's not be too mabait here. Baka naman your group was really behind the drafting.
We drafted the bill in collaboration with other commuter groups, and we presented this to lawmakers. We really tried to sell the bill to them.
But one way of looking at the proposal of yours is that the fact that we still need a Magna Carta for dignified commuting speaks well of how bad the situation is in Metro Manila.
Right. That's why our hashtag is commuters naman.
Oo.
Because it's high time that commuters are part of the conversation, or at the very least, there's somebody that's representing the affairs of the experience of commuters, so that when transport systems are planned, when cities are planned, there's an eye out for commuters. And by commuters, you also have to include persons with disabilities, children, mothers that are walking.
Oh, yung mga pregnant mothers na may dala-dala mga bata.
That's right. How easy would it be for them to move around the city? Mobility in a city is very important.
I do not want to single out any kind of transport, pero the thing is, ang bottom line nito, tayong lahat kailangan may disiplina.
Now let's talk about your concrete proposals here.
Sure.
So here, it's commuter-centric.
Yes,
The priority, naturally and logically, should be the commuter.
that's right.
So, what are the concrete proposals
Okay.
that you would like to see?
Okay, I'll name the five important ones. Number one, there has to be a transit stop within 500 meters of your residence or an activity center. So that could be a mall, a park. So there has to be a stop. Number two, public transport has to be available within 10 minutes.
Okay.
And that's very important because you should be able to plan your life around knowing when these things will,
Predictability.
predictability is very important. And we see that in Japan
Yeah.
when we go there. Number three, you must be able to traverse 15 kilometers within 1 hour.
Wow.
So that means prioritization
Yeah.
of infrastructure, such as the bus lanes.
Yeah.
It can also be prioritization in terms of traffic light signals.
And also no obstructions.
That's right. That's right. Number four, there has to be proper facilities for pedestrians and proper facilities for bike lanes. Now, our current building code provides for 1.5 meters only of sidewalk, and that's not enough. That's not enough for you to encourage people to walk.
You also have electric posts, plant boxes.
That's right.
Sidewalk vendors.
That's right. Because ideally, you should have a separate section for utilities, such as, because these things are important. You need to have lampposts for us to be able to receive electricity.
But not in the middle of the sidewalk.
But it shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be an obstruction to the sidewalk. So we're proposing 2.5 meters. How you should imagine this would be two people walking towards each other with an umbrella. They should be able to fit comfortably
Without bumping into each other.
without bumping into each other. And that is one of the things that define a walkability of a city.
Now, of course, those proposals would require good urban planning. But if you talk about Metro Manila or even just Manila,
Right.
you already have the existing structures there.
Right.
So, how do you expect
Well, number one would be enforcement of easement.
easement, right?
Easement would be very important.
But you would also need to demolish certain structures.
If they're in violation of the easement, then they should be demolished. They're on top of public property, and I think the president has issued that
Yeah.
pronouncement, making sure that all public spaces are open. Number two, for a built city like Metro Manila, we can always retrofit. We can make the sidewalks wider, and that again, infrastructure dictates behavior, and expanding sidewalks and taking a portion of the road is a signal that the government would like to encourage you to walk. If you think about it, there's a good number of people that travel around 4 to 5 kilometers. Those are short distance trips. That should be walkable.
Yeah.
Think about a mall. A mall is about, siguro end to end, about 500 meters. And people normally walk that up and down on a Sunday. And that easily is 2 kilometers inside a mall.
But they would say that the atmosphere is different, air
Right.
conditioned.
Sure.
But here, you have a lot of pollution.
Sure. But we can always replicate that on the road. We're able to build massive bridges. Why can't we build covered sidewalks? We see this in Makati all the time. In Makati, you can walk from one building to another. And I'm not even talking about the elevated walkways. On the ground in Salcedo Village, you can get from end to end without getting wet because there's proper roofing.
In some countries, I think some walkways underneath
Uh-huh.
are even air conditioned.
That's right. But you see, when you design things like that, it's very important to go back to the objective. Are you doing an elevated walkway or underground walkway to make it easier for cars? And on the other hand, making it more difficult for people to walk. Because remember, it's the conversation again has to go back to the welfare of the commuters. When you push them to go up, does it mean that that means you're prioritizing the cars because you'd like them to move faster? And what you're doing is you're subjecting the person to go up. That's
Additional effort on the part
an
of the
additional
commuter.
effort.
So you have to do the
The ideal really is for them to be able to cross at grade, which is street level, without them having to step down even. So you see this a lot in BGC, where they have what you call the elevated crossings. We call it the pedestrian tables, where the pedestrian sidewalk is actually elevated, so
Okay.
that from the curb you don't actually have to step down. It's continuous. That's not really a big effort for cars to go through.
Yeah.
But it means a big difference for pedestrians, especially if you're pushing a stroller, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're walking a bike. It's a very small inconvenience for cars, but a huge difference for pedestrians.
But you're just going to step on the brake and the other pedal, right? So
Exactly.
hindi naman ganun kahirap yun.
Exactly. And yet you're making it more conducive for walking. And this is what we'd like to always tell our motorists, or our friends that are motorists. And I have a lot of friends that are in cars, and that's totally fine. Whenever you see a person walking, or whenever you see a person on a bike, that's one less person on the road. At the end of the day, this bill is a win-win solution. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a win-win solution. When you're able to push people to take public transport, that's less cars on the road. And that actually makes it a nicer drive for you.
Also, of course, we also need to address the attitude of the car owners, the drivers, diba? This one is really very frustrating for me. A lot of vehicles in the Philippines do not respect the pedestrian lanes.
Sure. Because they feel entitled to the road. They will even go as far as saying, I pay user tax. And that it doesn't work. The taxation doesn't work that way.
Even the basic behavior of not slowing down. When you
Right.
see someone about to cross.
Right.
They find it very weird. Whenever you remind drivers, hey, the
Correct.
priority should be the pedestrian.
Correct. I mean, in LGUs go as far as penalizing motorists for not stopping at a crosswalk.
I think they have to.
But and yet, if you think about it, it's really just basic sharing. It's just sharing the road. I mean, it's a public resource. Not one person is entitled to it entirely.
I think a lot of Filipinos actually experience this abroad because here we're used to cars not stopping
Right.
or slowing down whenever
Right.
we're about to cross. But let's say we go to more developed countries.
Yes.
Let's say in Europe or even let's just use Europe for example,
Yeah.
or the United States. The moment that you step down from the sidewalk,
Right.
the car stop.
Exactly. Well, does that go far? Subic in particular, because their enforcement is, you're pretty sure you're gonna get caught. Cars stop at every corner, and that's how it should be. You should stop, let pedestrians cross, let old people cross, let PWDs cross first, because the effort for you to stop is so easy. It's so little compared to what it takes for you to do that.
Yeah.
I was talking to some architecture students from the College of St. Benilde, and they said one of the activities that their teachers made them do is to go around Vito Cruz in a wheelchair, and nothing helps you appreciate how difficult what these people go through if you haven't experienced it yourself. I mean, just for me, when I walk my scooter across the city, the number of times that I've had to lift it would be equivalent to spots where persons with disabilities can't go. And mobility is very important in a city because they have to have access to healthcare. They have to be able to go to work.
I think that's a very important exercise. Something that our policymakers, our
Yeah.
politicians, the MMDA people,
Sure.
transportation officials should also try.
Walk. I mean, all they need to do is walk. All they need to do is try to take public transport without media following them around,
Or try the wheelchair.
or try the wheelchair. You can see already you won't get very far. You have token curb cuts. Those are the slopes in a sidewalk. I mean, some of them are like extremely steep. They're practically hitting the ground.
That could make you,
Right, and
lose your balance or send you to your
right.
to-
So imagine somebody in a wheelchair that can't walk, that has to go through that. They're plummeting down, fast-moving traffic.
Now, so far, are the legislators listening? Are you gaining traction?
Well, yes, we're happy to say that our bill has now been filed 4 times in both houses of Congress, 2 in the Senate, courtesy of Senator Poe and Senator Pangilinan, and in the House of Representatives, care of Representative Reyes and Representative Benitez. And we're talking to more lawmakers, and they're interested to support the bill as well.
So here again, just to make it clear, the focus should be the commuters. But let's say drastic measures, proposals to somehow reduce the number of cars or even buses using the the roads?
Sure. There are provisions in the bill which I think is common in at least three of the versions that provide for disincentives for car use and incentives for use of public transport. Say for example, disincentives for, I mean, it's not in the bill, no, but it's not spelled out in the bill, but that could take the form of many things. Like in New York, disincentive for car use would be congestion pricing, which means that if you enter a highly busy street, then you'd have to pay a fee. That's done automatically in countries like Singapore. If you take a major road, you're automatically charged. And for us tourists, we easily see this in our taxi bill. They would issue you a receipt, and you can see that there's an additional charge because your taxi driver took the highway. And I think sometimes they'd ask you, do you want to take the highway or not? Mm-hmm. And that's a price that's congestion pricing, and it's a mechanism by which government is able to discourage the use of private vehicles. Incentives for use of public transport can be, say shuttles that bring you to a public transport stop. Discounted rates can be one. What the government is doing, I think it's a good thing that they're giving discounts for students, and that's a signal by government to say, why don't you go take public transport because we're going to give you a discount.
Yeah, and of course, let's also hope that the mass transport system would improve.
It has to catch up. It has to catch up to demand. When you were mentioning earlier a study by the Boston Consulting Group, that was 2017. I don't think a lot of people would agree with you now.
It's worse.
It's 66 minutes to get to work.
After 2 years.
After 2 years, right?
Oh.
It's gone drastically.
And if you go by the number of cars that are sold in Metro Manila alone,
right,
you could see that it would only take common sense to realize that the problem would only get worse.
Right. The MMDA themselves said it. The MMDA said it themselves that we're receiving 500 new cars a day, and this is because cities are places where people go for economic opportunities, for healthcare, for education. So of course people are going to be trooping here, and if you're not providing them with proper transport facilities, they will be forced.
Okay.
I mean, people have to go to work. People have to go to the hospitals. People have to go to school. And if there's no decent way for them to get from their house to wherever they need to go, they're going to buy a car.
There will be health hazards like stress, fatigue, and air pollution na makukuha natin through traffic and road congestions.
Finally, Ira, before we end, I'd like to talk about the Clean Air Act of 1999, because as a commuter also, you need to deal with the environment,
right,
with the pollution, even if you would like to actually take the public transport.
Right.
The situation is bad.
I've invested in a box of N95 filters. And yes, you're right. I mean, I have a right to clean air. But you see, that's what happens to us on the road. You're in the bike. You're trying to be not part of the problem. You're trying to be one less car, and then you have to face smog. Mm-hmm. You get overtaken by cars or buses that emit like black smoke. And really, one time there was a jeepney that overtook me. And then as soon as they hit the pedal, I think the smoke came out, and I couldn't see anything for at least 2 seconds.
War zone.
I practically disappeared. And that's the kind of thing you have to face every day. That's why that's why restoring dignity in commuting is very important. You have to be able to get to your place of work, to school, not thinking that this is the worst thing for me to have done today.
Yeah.
It should be okay for you to say, I went to work by public transport, and that's totally fine. People are not going to think, oh, he can't afford a car. And that's very important because we need to be able to design. I mean, people have to also remember that this is not just for the benefit of Metro Manila. One, of course, Metro Manila is going to be a big benefactor to this because our traffic levels are already very high. But also, this is important for cities that are growing or up-and-coming cities because they need to be able to design their transport systems and their cities to the behavior that they want their citizens to become.
In that sense, no more excuses if you're going to build a city from ground up.
Right.
Because the excuse usually is that a lot of the cities had been there for so many years.
Yes.
And they acknowledge that urban planning was bad, and they're trying to adjust.
Right. In one state in the United States, I'm sorry, I just really forget the name of the state. Their default is for there to be bike lanes, and in fact, the engineering department has to justify why the construction of that road will not have a bike lane. So it really sets the tone that this is what I expect to see in a street, a complete street, if you may.
Okay.
And the default really is to have a bike lane. And so it's really about shifting the point of view of people to really force them to think about everybody that's using the road, and not just the cars, but also people that are walking. If you remember, I have to point out, when you say 80% of people commute, that doesn't even count pedestrians.
Oh, okay.
And on Guadalupe alone, you can see how many people cross from Guadalupe to the other side towards Pasig, walking in that tiny. They're practically on a catwalk on that Guadalupe bridge, and that doesn't even count any of those people.
Okay. Well, of course, here it's important to change the attitude.
Yep.
Come up with good infrastructure.
Right.
Good policy.
Right.
And as your hashtag says,
Commuters naman.
commuters naman.
And that's why,
Yeah.
in order for you, and this is not just about designing a city. This is a process that all brand people, all product managers go through. You talk to your consumers. What is it that you want? And I think a city is no different from a product. You must want people to buy it. You must want people to go there. And so you need to know what they want and what they need. And that's 80% of the people that you're not asking.
Okay. So, Ira Cruz, Director of AltMobility PH, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having us, Christian.
Thank you. And that's it for today's episode of Matters of Fact. I'm Christian Esguerra. See you again next week in this podcast.